Would you just look at this design? This is, of course, we all know the Mazda 3. It's been around in this specific design since 2019, and I hope Mazda keeps this design for another 5 years. This is the top spec, the Premium Plus with the turbo engine, 250 horsepower under this hood. Unfortunately though, I don't understand. If this had a manual, it would be a perfect car for me, because we do have 250 horsepower, all-wheel drive in this beautiful package. Some changes for the interior for 2024, which we're gonna have a look at, and of course the design, the Kodo design language. We're gonna talk about the front, the side, the rear, and the interior. And then of course we need to take this turbo fun hatch, beautiful looking hatch, out for a drive. Under the hood of the 2024 Mazda 3 Turbo Premium Plus, we do have a 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder putting out 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque, connected to a 6-speed automatic transmission. All-wheel drive, 0 to 60 is done in 5.8 seconds. Top speed, 134 miles per hour. The fuel economy comes in at 23 city, 31 highway, and the price for this is $38,200. Starting with the front end design of the 2024 Mazda 3 Premium Plus, the turbo version, I do understand that some people want to see a refresh. It's been out, as I said, since 2019, and I do think they could have maybe updated it a little bit, but just looking at this overall design, I think it's a gorgeous, stunning design with this typical Mazda design language, the Kodo design language, which means play around with empty surfaces and just a couple of key sharp lines, creating this beautiful, stunning little package. You can see the key lines, and it definitely screams Mazda when you look at it from a front view. What I love about this specific 2024 Mazda 3 is that we have the pearl white, the snowflake white, in contrast with all the black graphics that we have for the turbo version here. Full LED headlights, as you can see. I love how the graphic sits within this bodywork, how the headlights are carved out from this volume, and all the way down low at the bottom we do have this front lip that extends pretty substantially at the very bottom of the car, hugging the road. Looks almost like a bit of an aftermarket piece in a good way, because it feels like it flows beautifully with the rest of the front end. Looking at the Mazda 3 from a straight front view like you're doing right now, you can see that we have one key line down here, and I've heard some people wanting Mazda to implement some fog lights into this car, but I think that would ruin the overall cleanliness that we have in the front here. You can see this big LED daytime run lights here in the middle with the circle, and the LED indicator up top as well, housed in this beautiful black housing. And on top of that we have a couple, just 2 lines up on the hood, nothing over stylized at all. This is the opposite of over stylized, just focus on some beautiful proportions. And what I love that Mazda did here is they focused more, they put priority on styling more in some cases than functionality, and that is something we rarely see today. We're gonna have a look at that specifically in a side view. Now this car actually sits pretty low to the ground, so if I were to buy this, I would probably switch out the wheels. I'm gonna talk more about that in a second, but I wouldn't lower it because it already sits only 5.5 inch from the ground. Now looking at the wheels and tires here, we have 18-inch wheels blacked out, which, as you know, seems to be the trend of the decade, or the trend of the last 5 years at least. I would want to switch these out. I also want to have a little bit wider tires. These are just 2 15mm wide tires. I want to have them a little wider so they poke out right in line with the bodywork right here. Now when we're talking about proportions and functionality, styling of cars today, they tend to go more towards functionality over styling. But in this case, just have a look at this area down here at all the way back, the C-pillar, just how massive and thick this piece is. And there is also no sharp shoulder line. Instead, they decided to go with this soft, empty surfaces in combination with a couple of key lines. We have one sharp line at the bottom to reduce some of that volume in the rear end. Otherwise, it would be an empty sea of just empty surfaces. We need to have a couple of sharp lines here, and I think Mazda has done a fantastic job with this design. An interesting feature here is I want to see this chrome trim that goes only on the lower section of the greenhouse up until this area here. The top is blacked out. I definitely want to have this be blacked out as well, just to have a continuity in the graphics all around the greenhouse. Another reason I love this design is all the small little graphic touches that we have here. For example, we do have a black housing for the mirror cap here. Beautiful LED integrated in the mirror itself. And if we follow the roofline, how it dips down here, creating this beautiful wing at the rear, which is pretty big, and it's also functional because you have the air flowing underneath here and coming out underneath, adding some downforce to the rear end of this car. And it also looks very cool, and I love that it made that black because it works with all the rest of the graphics that we have on this car. All the way in the back, we still have the full LED taillights here, beautifully done with these round circles, reminding me a lot of the front headlight actually, in the same type of styling back here, even though they don't sit as deep in the bodywork. It would be cool to see some cuts here, similar to what we have in the front end, in the rear end as well. Very soft. You can see just how this bulges here have this nice wave design to it. Everything is soft. Again, we just have a couple of key sharp lines here in the back. Now, if we go all the way down to the bottom, I love the symmetry that we have here. We have a little bit bigger exhaust pipes for the Mazda Turbo. I'm not a huge fan of these chrome badges here, the Sky Active and the Turbo badge on the right side, and then you have Mazda 3 all-wheel drive. I would just probably remove them all together because they make it a little bit messy, and another way, super clean rear end. I do like the diffuser here, the integration, black, again, black graphics in the lower section. You can see how much volume this carves out from the rear end. And if we open this up, it's not power assisted in this case, but you just have to manually open it. I don't mind that at all. You don't have a lot of space back here because you can see the angle here is pretty substantial, but it's still very much a proper hatch with proper storage back here. And underneath this cover, you find that you do have a spare tire down there as well. And if you want more space, you can always fold down the rear seats. Stepping into the stunning interior of the 2024 Mazda 3 Premium Plus Turbo. I love the layout here. We have one major new thing for 2024, and that is going to be the infotainment screen. This is now 10.5 inches instead of 8.8 for the 2023. Not a big deal to me if we have a 10.5 or 8.8, it doesn't really matter to me. However, the layout of the screen, it's so far up here, I have to reach all the way, like lean forward to reach this screen. And it's now also, you can configure it to be a touchscreen while you're driving as well. So that is good news. You have wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto in this design. And I'm surprised by how premium this interior feels. It's so stripped down of anything that looks messy. Everything is so clean. I love that the exterior Kodo design comes in to the interior here as well. And it's just overall a stunning functional layout of this interior. We also have soft touch material on places that I wasn't expecting. For example, up here as well. And this is all leather stitched with the soft touch materials here. Very soft, and specifically in the door handles. Just check this out, how much softness we have going on in the door handles. I love that because when you're driving, it's extremely comfortable to rest your arms on both the middle section here and the armrest right here. The gauge cluster is sort of semi-digital. Love that we have a beautiful housing for it and how the vents come out on each side like this. It just looks like everything is connected in this interior. The middle section of the gauge cluster is configurable, so you can change the layout of how you want that digital display to look. The fuel gauge and the temp is all analog, and so is the tachometer to the left side. Perfectly fine for me. It's a good mix of digital and analog in my opinion. Moving on to the center console here, we do have this small little section of everything you need when it comes to physical buttons. Thankfully, they did not switch this up and made this into a all digital display. Instead, we have these gorgeous knobs with a nice click sound to it for the temperature, looking beautiful. And we have dual climate zones in this car. You have the fan speed buttons here as well. Heated seats and heated steering wheel. You have heated seats in 3 settings. You don't have cooled seats or ventilated seats, which again, I don't really care about that because usually it doesn't work that great anyway. Moving on to the side here, look how beautifully integrated the vents are for the passenger side, just looking fantastic. And you have the start button located right here where you expect to find it. Further down, we do have a wireless charger right here, 2 cup holders, and some gloss piano style black plastic, which I would like to have in a matte finish because this is gonna definitely scratch up and show a lot of fingerprints when you use it. Now this is the thing I don't understand with the 2024 Mazda Turbo version. If you want a manual, you have to go down to the 2.5 liter non-turbo, 191 horsepower. That's where you can get the manual transmission. That is also front wheel drive. This one, 250 horsepower, you have all-wheel drive, but you can't get it with a manual. And I said this in the beginning, if this had a 6-speed manual, it would be one of the best looking, best driving small little hatchbacks on the market today. But this 6-speed automatic is not bad, it's just a shame. This is a car that you want to have with a manual transmission. Anyway, you do have the gear selector here, putting it into reverse, gonna pop up the camera views. And I was surprised to see that we do have a front 360 camera here. We have front view, rear view in a pretty decent resolution as well. And if you just want to pop up the camera view without putting it into reverse, you do have the camera button right here. And here you can see all the views that you have for the car 360. Looking pretty small here to the right side, but you do have it in the 2024 Mazda 3. To the left side of the gear selector, you do have this little toggle, which is an interesting toggle because this is the only sport settings you have, or driving setting. You have sport on or off. Very, very simple, and I love that about the car. It's interesting that they made it this toggle instead of just a button. Very interesting solution for that. You have the parking brake here, and if you don't want to use the touchscreen, you always have this Mazda rotary dial here. Volume knob as well on the right side here. And again, this is so soft, this top of this armrest. You can slide it back and forth. If you open it up, you're gonna find that you do have 2 USB-Cs here. They switched it up. They used to have a USB-A. I kind of still want to have USB-As in cars because I have devices still that uses USB-A, quite a few of them actually. You have this divider in here as well. Not too big of a storage space, but I wouldn't expect it to be bigger than this in a hatchback this size. Now these seats, they look good, they feel good, they sort of support you, but this being the Turbo Premium Plus with 250 horsepower, I would love to see better bolstering and more support, specifically on the side, maybe a little bit more sporty vibe for the seats. These feel like they're more angled towards luxury and comfort than sport, and I want to switch that up for the Turbo version. Steering wheel looking typical Mazda with this small little circle in the middle, pretty thin spokes. You have the controls for the cruise control settings here on the right side, the controls for adjusting the center screen here on the left side, and also the volume buttons and radio settings here. On the back side, you actually do get the choice to switch gears manually with these paddles here. I've used it a little bit, but it doesn't feel too responsive, specifically on upshifts. And if you hit the red line, it's going to upshift for you. And if I have paddles on my car, I want to have complete control, even if I don't know how to shift gears properly. I still want it to let me rev it up to the red line without it shifting gear for me. This car comes equipped with a Bose sound system, sounds pretty good. Up top, we do have a standard size sunroof. Up here, something that you know I don't really care about, but having it just be a small little standard size like this is totally fine. And last but not least, you do have a pretty large glove box for this type of vehicle. Now that said, let's jump into the back seat because I haven't sat there yet, and it's going to be interesting to see if I can actually fit behind my own driving position, me being 6'1", 6'2", because it looks pretty tight back there. All right, let's see how this goes. The good news is you can see the door opens pretty wide, almost 90 degrees here. So that's a plus. Now jumping in here, and as I was suspected, it is pretty tight back here. It's not too bad, honestly. I could sit like this behind my own driving position, maybe not for a long road trip, but just for small trips, it would be fine. Now, the cool thing about this, as I said before, they prioritize some of the design over the functionality. Just have a look at the size of this window and how small it is when I close it. Just look at this area here, this line, how it just carves up, and I like it a lot because it makes it very, very cozy back here with a super slim window for the passenger seats, and it also helps the styling of this car and makes it look beefy right there in the rear end. The only thing though, I want to switch those 215s out because if we have this big mass over the rear, I need to have fatter tires in the rear, probably put on 19s there as well. Alright guys, let's take the 2024 Mazda 3 Premium Plus Turbo for a drive. First of all, let's get out of this rally stage that we're on right now, this gravel The handling is so good in this car. So as I said, I've been driving this for a couple of days now. I love it. I love. Pretty much Mazda is doing some great things now. The new Miata that I just reviewed a couple of weeks ago, that is also so good. The only thing about this one though, as I said, I want to have a manual transmission. It's just too bad that they don't offer this with a manual. And if you want a manual, you have to go down to the non-turbo 2.5 liter, which is 191 horsepower instead of 250. And you also lose the all-wheel drive, which is something that I want, specifically if I live in a state that gets a lot of snow. Oh yeah, I mean the torque figures in this. You got 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque. And the thing that you can feel the most when you're stepping on it is the torque, because it feels like it's just, instead of pushing you forward like horsepower do, the torque feels like it just pulls from the front. It just drags you forward. And 320 pound-feet of torque in this is really, really great in my opinion. I don't feel like I need more power. 0 to 60 in about 5.8, 5.9 seconds, something like that. Not the quickest car out there, but I don't care the way this car looks. If you put some nice wheels and tires on here, it's just going to be an absolutely fantastic looking hatchback, a stunner. And we're up to 50 there, going uphill. If we want to, that was not even in sport mode, so let's put it in sport with this funny toggle here. And also put it into manual, why not? Let me just show you how these paddles behave. Down to third, so downshifts are a lot quicker than upshifts for sure. I'm just surprised by the handling of this car. And when I step on it there, I'm in manual now, but it decided to just kick down to second without me even touching the paddle. So I don't understand why even have paddles if it's not gonna allow me to choose the exact gear I want whenever I want. Now this has been around since 2019, and honestly, I sort of wouldn't mind if this was around in this exact same layout with the styling on the interior and the exterior for another 5 years. I really wouldn't mind, because I think everything in here is almost perfect, except, as I said, if I just sit and drive like this, I can't reach the navigation screen. It's too far away. I have to like lean forward and reach it. So I want to have that be a little bit closer to the driver if they're gonna have it be a touchscreen, which it is. And that's pretty much it for the interior that I don't really like. Another thing that they kind of I would have want to see some difference from the non-turbo version are the seats. Want to have this be more sporty seats. Just have some more bolstering on there, because they don't really hug you in the corners. And since this is such a great handling car, I want to have a little bit more bolsterings on the sides. Aston Martin DBX. I feel like this car feels more premium than what it is. The ride quality is great. It's quiet in here. It's very smooth and comfortable. I wouldn't call it a hot hatchback. First of all, you don't have a manual. Every single hot hatch needs to have a manual option at least. And secondly, it feels more like almost like a GT hatchback. I wouldn't mind driving this across the country because it's so comfortable. The only thing about that though is, by the way, we're gonna go on the highway here. I wanna show you the noise level in here. The only thing about going cross country with this would be the tiny little fuel tank that we have. So we have 26 miles per gallon combined, and that will give you a reach of about 280 miles or something like that. So the fuel economy is not fantastic, it's not bad either, but I wish they had a bit of a bigger fuel tank. So let's go onto the highway here, cruise up to highway speeds. We're up to 65 now. Pretty busy today. Let's pop it out of sport mode now since we're on the highway and just cruise along. And this is what I love about the Mazda 3. It feels like it feels like a bigger car than what it is, because it's so stable on the highway and it's so smooth and relatively quiet. And for $38,000, I do think this is a pretty good deal, honestly. It definitely goes. 250 horsepower in this type of package is definitely enough. You know what, let's pop it back into sport. Let's see if we can hear the exhaust a little bit here. Back into manual, second gear, and let's go. Uphill. The power delivery is so smooth. I like it. That's what I say. It's not really a hot hatchback that revs crazy. This goes out to 6,200 RPM for the red line, and that's pretty much it. But it's still a fun car to drive. It feels so solid, this little hatchback from Mazda. It feels like a it is a premium plus. That's in the name, but I didn't expect it to feel this solid. Can't really hear the exhaust. I would like to hear the exhaust a little bit more than we do here. But again, it's more, as I said, it's more of a GT car. Into this corner, beautiful. Steering is very sensitive. You don't need to do a lot with the steering wheel to get a lot of effect on where you're turning. Down to second, into the corner, all four wheels putting that power down. It even shifts a little early. If I don't shift it, it's gonna shift it around 5,500 RPM, even though the red line is at 6,200 RPM. But other than that, how do we sum up the 2024 Mazda 3 Premium Plus Turbo? It's a great car, even though it's been out for 5 years. It goes really well. The torque numbers are fantastic. The quality feel of the interior and the exterior styling, beautiful. But in the $38,000 price range, you do have a lot of other options. But the thing is, if you put the correct wheel and tire size on this, maybe 235s all around with 19s, if you want to lower it just a little bit, you can do that as well. It's gonna turn into a design that is very hard to beat.